making movies is hard.
Making movies is hard.
Welcome. This is the podcast about the struggle of being an independent filmmaker. I'm Alrik Purcell, the founding host of the podcast. I'm a sci-fi horror filmmaker, and my first feature film, The Alternate, has pretty much finished its film festival run, although we are playing Phoenix in April, which is really exciting. But yeah, it's going to be out in the masses sometime in 2022.
I'm Liz Manischel. I'm a writer, director, producer who has made 2 features, Bread and Butter and Speed of Life, currently on Showtime. I'm in development on about 5 more films. I'm a distribution consultant who does sales, and I used to manage Sundance's creative distribution initiative. This week, we welcome filmmaker Chris Yogi on the show to talk about his experience going through the Sundance Labs, making his first feature, August at Akikos, and how that led him to making a second feature, I Was a Simple Man, that premiered at Sundance in 2021. After that, we discuss an article by Ed Meza from Variety about how a new NFT platform is hoping to boost indie filmmakers. And then we read another iTunes review. But first, Alrik, how's life? What's going on for you?
Oh, life is good. I just got back from vacation. It's been hard to return to real life.
Somewhere? Where were you?
I was in a place called Sea Ranch up north. Do you know where that is? Are you familiar?
No.
It's near a town called Gulala. And it's a little town that's basically like, I don't know if you call it like an artist seaside community or like what you would call it, but they basically have made it so that every building in that area has to follow a certain style or structure. So they're all wood. They're all angled a certain way. And like you drive through and it's like, it's got this really specific artistic look to it. Is it near Pismo Beach? No, other direction.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh, right. It's north for me, not for you. Okay. Yes.
Yeah. North from San Francisco, not north from LA. Yeah. But I go there every year with my friends. And it was the first time I took BB on a trip. It was first trip ever. And she got a lot of firsts. She got to see the ocean for the first time. She got to be in a pool for the first time. And it was really fun just to, have 4 or 5 whole days off with my family and just to hang out with my daughter all day. And now that I can't hang out with her all day, it's like I really miss hanging out with her all day. Bummer. And yeah, I've been reading scripts. I just finished another script. I'm starting to get burnt out on reading scripts. I don't know. I think I didn't like the last one that I read very much. It wasn't terrible. It was just like I read one and I had to stop because it was not good enough. And then I read another one and then that one was like not as good as the other 2 I had just read. And so now I'm like, I need a good script to read. So I don't know. I have like one other, but I also kind of want to read something that I could actually potentially make. And the other one I have on my list is like, a science fiction, like, 5 to 10 million, if not more movie, and it's just like, I don't know. I kind of want to read something that you could make for $500,000, but it's really hard to find those scripts, hard to find. So anyways, but yeah, how are you doing? How are things with you?
Things are good. We've been watching the Oscar movies. My husband is like we're both into the Oscars, but he's a completionist. So at the very least, we have to watch every single Best Picture nominee. So we're 5 in right now.
What's your favorite?
Well, I only want to watch the happy ones, so we've only watched the happy ones so far, and now we're going into the dark ones, and I'm not ready.
What are the happy ones? I want to know what the happy ones are.
Okay, so we've watched King Richard. We've watched. Oh shit! Oh my God! Sean's like outside the door yelling at me. I have a list. Let me look at this list. And it's like really fun to check it off as we watch the movies. So I loved King Richard. I thought that was really wonderful, actually. Coda, we watched Coda. Sean liked that. I mean, we both liked it, but Sean liked it a little bit more than me. We watched Licorice Pizza. We watched Don't Look Up. And we watched... Did we only watch 4? I thought we watched 5. Oh, Dune. We've seen Dune.
Uh-huh.
And
I like that Don't Look Up is like one of the happier ones with the ending that Don't Look Up has. No spoilers.
Right. Well, the 5 that we have left, and I don't know actually what the tone of Belfast, but it's Belfast, Drive My Car, Nightmare Alley, Power of the Dog, and West Side Story. So they're the more heft, darker material.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Nightmare Alley, I would say, is in the same category as the first 5.
Oh, that's great. Okay, because that's our next one is Nightmare Alley.
Oh, awesome.
My friend David Ruckman told me he's seen it 4 times, and he's hard to please. He's very hard to please.
Wow.
So amazing. It makes me think like I gotta watch it. Yeah, so we're watching those movies, and then I had this meeting with Amy Taylor this morning where I was like, Amy, I actually have control or we have control over making this horror film. We can actually make this horror film. Why am I not prioritizing it? Why am I avoiding doing an outline? Why am I, doing everything else instead of writing the script with you? And she's like, okay, we're going to create deadlines for ourselves and really going to focus on this project. So I think some like glittering gemstones were, I don't know, what are they, distracting me for a few months, possibly. And now I'm going back to the world of manifesting films and really trying to get something off the ground that I have control over, not this like weird development game that I keep referring to with these films that I'm attached to. Though 2 of those films that I'm attached to have really loving, hardworking people, and I'm not going to leave them stranded. So I just want to acknowledge that.
Yeah, but you can also, but you don't need to make them your top priority necessarily. Like you can make something that you can actually control your top priority.
I think so.
Which I think is better.
Yeah, so that's what's going on. But what also, should I transition? I feel like we usually spin off into something at this point.
No, I don't know. I was just going to think one thing I didn't talk about, but I don't know. Let's not go back.
Say it.
Oh, okay. So yeah, I've in addition to reading scripts, I've also been like collaborating with writers on ideas. So there's 2 different writers I'm working with on like this little concepts where it's just like, one of them, I pitched 3 ideas and then he took one and he's like, okay, I like this. Then he wrote me a treatment based off my idea that was very different. And now he's like working on that and like trying to beef out the treatment and make it into like a full outline, So that's really exciting because it feels like I'm not writing anything, but like I feel like I am because I'm like a part of this creative process.
You went from treatment to outline?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know what you'd call it because to me, a treatment isn't a full outline. It's just like kind of a rough. Well, here, maybe you tell me what it is because like what he wrote me was like a little rough like overview of what the script could be, which I thought of as a treatment. Maybe that's not what a treatment really
maybe
is.
You just say it's like a rough treatment. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. It's funny because Amy and I are going from outline to treatment.
Oh, funny.
And the treatment for us is like a 3 to 10 page document where you essentially write in prose what happens in the movie. That's how we interpret that word treatment.
But I was thinking of it backwards. Like the treatment is just like the rough little, and like the outline would be like the more detailed, like almost like a beat sheet, of like, here's what happens in the movie. But I wonder, you probably use them interchangeably for either.
I think it's fine. It's like the word one sheet or the phrase one sheet. It's like everyone has a different interpretation of what a one sheet is anyway.
I hate one sheets. So stupid. I was told to make one, didn't use it for anything. Fuck one sheets.
I always ask my clients to create a one sheet for me because I really do use them in distribution. But for everything,
you really?
Yeah, I really, because it's from here. This is my sneaky trick. Since I don't believe distributors watch the movie, I give them a cheat sheet, which I call a one sheet. And I basically say, this is what the movie's about. Here's the running time. Here's the specs. But also here are the audiences you could target. Here's data on comp films. And it's all in one piece of paper. So no one can be like, I'm too lazy to read a piece of paper. It's one piece of paper. So I do that for distribution.
I like that. That's awesome.
But yes, you're collaborating with writers.
Yeah. So that's been fun. And another one who, maybe I'll out actually is Eric Toms, our producer. Yeah. We've been spitballing an idea back and forth. He hasn't gotten anything like super duper detailed, but what he sent me last, I was like really excited by. So I can't wait to see what he comes up with. So lots of fun stuff. Also need to be writing too. I wrote like last week, I think I wrote maybe 5 pages of my script and it felt like a real win. And then like this week, nothing. So I got to get my 5 pages.
You can ride high for a few weeks off of 5 pages.
Oh, 5 pages? Really? You give me 5 pages?
Yeah, again, we've been doing this outline for like 6 months. So I think 5 pages sounds really meaningful.
It's funny. I have the outline for the thing that I wrote over, I don't know, months and months and months. And I finished it on my flight to Italy for the alternate screening there. And then I wrote like 10 pages on that same flight. And then from there, it's like 18 pages or something. Months and months later. So it feels like it's coming together and I have the outline to lean on. So it's like, to me, there's no excuse why this movie shouldn't be written in a month, but I don't know. That's easier said than done.
Do you know what there's also no excuse for?
What's that?
Listening to the show and not supporting the Patreon. And the reason I say that is because it's real cheap. The bar is low, guys. If you give like $1.99, you have access to the entire back catalog of every single episode we've ever made. But also, it's really meaningful to us that you'd be willing to support making the show with us and putting some skin in the game.
And you get to hear amazing things like our weekly meetings where we talk about the show, which we've started to post to our Patreon page. So it's like a little insider look into, how we plan for our show every week and like how we talk about the podcast. And I feel like sometimes with Eric, they're like mini podcast episodes. So that's why we like decided to record them. It's like we're like talking about, and then we just go off on these tangents and it's like, oh, why aren't we recording this? So we just started recording them. So you can check those out. There's also like videos from Liz, videos from me on there. There'll be more. So, you're not just supporting us. You get a little extra behind the scenes stuff for you too. So check that out if you'd like.
We do want to let everyone know about someone else who's supporting the show, and that's Jambox.io. And if you listen to the show, you know that they're a new royalty-free music and SFX company, and they emphasize high-quality cinematic cues. They're pretty cool. Alrik's use them. They offer customized plans to fit your needs. They focus on working with composers on an exclusive basis. So when you're working with a cue, it's your cue. It's not popping up on other platforms. So if you're interested in exploring Jambox Io, you can use the promo code MMIH in all caps when signing up to get a 20% discount on your subscription. But without any more further delay, here's our chat with Chris Yogi.
Chris, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here today. Give us the elevator pitch for I Was a Simple Man.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. I Was a Simple Man is a ghost story that's set in the North Shore of Hawaii, which is my home. And it tells the story of an old man who's on his deathbed and he's visited by the ghosts of his past. So it's a very surreal, it's not your traditional ghost story. It's very surreal, based on memory, based on history, and based on a lot of personal stories from my family and from my youth growing up there.
How many days did you shoot?
We shot for 25 days. We did a really cool thing where we shot like with a big crew for like 4 weeks. And then the last week we like went small and we did like a really like on the like mobile crew for the last week.
And what was your rough budget, if you can say?
We were under $1 million.
How did you come up with the idea?
Oh, wow. This idea came to me over 10 years ago. It was inspired by a period in my life when I experienced a lot of death in the family. And the film is about grieving. It's about being in the room with someone who's passing away. A family comes out to the North Shore to sort of be with the main character as he's on his deathbed and kind of going into the afterlife. And that was really just based on my experience. I went through a period in my life where I lost a few people in my life, my father to cancer, and then a grandfather to suicide, and then another grandfather to cancer. And just like that boom, boom, boom was like really just a really disorienting period in my life that I don't think I had the tools at the time to really deal with what was going on. I just remember the feeling though of being in the room with someone who's passing away. That sort of like really sort of terrifying and yet in retrospect, very beautiful feeling that someone's life is sort of closing in on the room around us. Like it's almost like they're seeing things that aren't there. They're talking to people that aren't there. They're going through their own journey. We're not really accessing that. And so I just really wanted to make a film that captured what it felt like to be in the room with someone who's passing away. And that was 10 years ago. And then it took me a really long time to get the film made. So it's been a long journey since that initial kernel of an idea.
And then compared to all other projects you've made, how difficult was it to make this one?
The most difficult, just in terms of getting it made, for sure. Just because it's an art film. It's a film shot in Hawaii. There isn't the infrastructure to make a lot of indies in Hawaii. And it's a full Asian American Pacific Islander cast. Like it's just on every level. It's also about an old man who's dying. Like it's not the sexiest sort of pitch. And so it was tough movie to make, but we got it made. And really, I'm just proud that we got it made. That really is the accomplishment in my mind.
Now, the micro-budget world is a little bit controversial. And I know this film is not necessarily micro-budget, but your other feature, August Akikos, is, if I'm allowed to say it is, am I allowed?
Yeah.
Seeking approval? Okay. Just making sure. And then you did mention that this film was under $1 million. I guess there's a question out here. I don't know if it's formed, but what is your philosophy with regard to budget? I mean, are you afraid of a micro budget? Are you afraid of the associations Is it all about just getting the project off the ground? What a lot of different people feel like micro-budgets devalue the artist in some way. And it sounds like you have potentially a different perspective.
Yeah. I'm curious, like, what is the question about devaluing the artist? Like, I don't think that's been something that that's crossed my mind.
Well, because
it's something that we talk about a lot, I think in general.
Yeah. I think where I'm coming from is the idea that, first of all, a lot of people don't want to talk about their budgets. But second of all, the idea that a director needs to prove that they can handle budgets of certain sizes in order to, quote unquote, make it in this industry. And then also the idea of, how do you know that you have the budget for that idea? Like, are you being restrictive? And does that have some sort of fallout on the execution of the idea? I know these are really vague ideas and vague concepts that I'm throwing at you for our first question. But I guess I admire micro-budget creators so much that I just am curious where you come with regard to budget.
Yeah, I mean, with both our films, with August at Akikos, the first film, and with this film, I think a lot of it came from responsibility. Like, we definitely knew that in both cases, we were making art films, and we were making films for a very specific audience, a niche audience. Yeah. So we knew that this wasn't a film that was going to be a blockbuster, for example. And we knew that going in. And so to then sort of craft the budget of the film so that it's responsible to that end, to the amount of money that we thought the film would do in the marketplace, for example. So really, we use that as a guide. Both films are very art house and pretty strident about it. And so we knew that it wouldn't necessarily be a film that investors would be flocking to pour a bunch of money into. With the first film being very, very small was actually kind of part of the fun of it. Like, we wanted to make a film that was very mobile. Our crew was, I think, 5 people. It was a situation where, like, I was running sound on some, like, I was doing second camera. Our DP then would do sound sometimes. Sarah, the producer, would like jump on a camera or like do whatever, like hold a bounce board. Our lead actor at some point was like holding a bounce board, stuff like that. Like, we were in this mode, like, we just really wanted to make a film. And by keeping it small, we were then able to have a lot of time. And with that film, that's really what came into play, like, in making the film, I think, as beautiful as it is, because we were able to then immerse ourselves in the culture. That film is set on the Big Island of Hawaii. It's about a community. And we were able to be in the community and just exist and do a lot of research, meet a lot of people, sort of embed ourselves and learn, and also give back. We're volunteering. We were meeting with people, hearing their stories, even though it had nothing to do with the film per se. And then that just, but it all kind of makes its way into the film little by little. We valued the freedom and the time and the mobility with that first one. And that's why we kept the budget very small. And to be honest, it was one of the most liberating sort of filmmaking experiences I've ever had, to have that sort of freedom to just, not be beholden to making days. For example, I'm also an editor, so I was editing the film at night, and I would show the crew in the morning. I'd be like, this is what we did yesterday. This is what I think is working. This is what I think is not working. And just having that sort of process in which we were all sort of making the film together like a band was one that I really valued, and that I think really reinvigorated my love of filmmaking in a lot of ways. So I'm a big fan of the way in which we made that film. I don't know if we'll be able to return to that. I hope we are in some way, or I hope I can incorporate some of those values into the work moving forward. We'll see.
So just to follow up, like, can you say what the budget was on your first feature? Are you comfortable talking about that?
I don't know if I can. I think it was around 150.
That's what I remember you telling me.
Yeah. It was a small budget, and that includes post, that includes finishing.
Wait, were you saying you didn't know if you could because you couldn't remember, or because you were worried about fallout from saying that?
No. I just could. I don't know if I could remember, but I know it's around there, but I don't know the exact number. So
just to double down on Liz's question, because this is something that I think is really interesting to me, and something that my filmmaker friends have talked about a lot, is like, like all our crew, you're kidding yourself. Like, you're going to make a $200,000 movie or around there. Like, why would you bother doing that? Because no one's going to see it. Like what's the last $200,000 movie that you ever saw? That's like this argument that people have brought to me in the past and continue to bring to me. And then we have guests on the show who make movies for like way, way less than that, like $50,000, $40,000, $70,000. So like the question comes to the point, it's like, is that a legitimate way to make a movie? Like, or do you feel like no, like you need, like in order to actually get noticed, to actually have impact, like you need to make it on a bigger budget, or does, that's the question really.
Yeah. I mean, I obviously it doesn't matter. Like a movie's a movie. Like I have movies that are shot, like one shot on an iPhone, and I consider it a movie. I put it up online and people watch it, and I consider that a movie. It's made for nothing except, 15 minutes of my time. And so, yeah, it's definitely a movie. I don't know the answer to the question of how it's perceived on the other side. I don't know. I do know that the perception around the second film, which is a bigger film, was different than the first film. And I do think that it in many ways is perceived as a quote unquote more real movie because it was made with the production processes that are more in line with a sort of Hollywood industrial production process. And it has, I think, more of a look where it has name actors. It has people, it has big crews or whatever, and like department heads in a way that the first film didn't. And I do get the feeling that people treat it a little differently for sure. But to me, they're both movies and I love them both. They're just different,
Well, and I know that you're being a little bit modest, or maybe you think that maybe you presume we're going to get to this point, but that feature August Akikos was a massive success. I mean, the premiere at Rotterdam, the coverage in the New Yorker. I mean, the film was on a lot of, I remember, because we're friends on Facebook, so I got to see some of it. But I mean, it was on top 10 lists of the year when it came out. And I guess I'd love to hear about that process of having this liberating experience, making this smaller film and then seeing it balloon up in front of you.
Yeah, it was wild, because again, when we were going into it, really the inspiration or the motivation behind making the movie is because we were having such a hard time getting I Was a Simple Man made. We, at that point, had gone through the Sundance Labs. We were taking all these meetings, just rejections all over the place. And it was just demoralizing. And we were pounding our head against the wall trying to get this movie made. And we were like, you know what, like, let's just do something else that's, a palate cleanser of sort, but let's do something that's fun. Like, let's do something that is like, in a lot of ways, like low stakes is what we felt. And I think that was a smart thing to do because part of me felt like I almost like went into the film being like, I know this is going to be cool. Like, I think what we're putting together is cool. Whatever we make is going to be very cool. But, if it isn't, then okay. Like, that's okay. Like, at least we had fun making it and at least we tried. So it was very much putting very low pressure on ourselves and just really emphasizing the value of being creative, having freedom, having fun with your friends. And then all that other stuff is just, we couldn't have predicted that it would have done as well as it has. And all of those things are so random and all based on it's almost like I can draw a line where like everything that happened to that film was based in some sort of like random encounter or some sort of like somebody just helping out when we needed help, so all of that stuff is really out of our control. So we just rode with it. And obviously I'm very glad that the film has its fans, that's really cool that we made this cool thing and I love it, but to see other people love it as much as I do is beautiful. I mean, I'm so grateful.
So after all the success with August at Akikos, what happened? What was the reaction that led you to making I Was a Simple Man? Like, was it just like, oh, here's all the money, let's go? Or like, was there other steps to it to get the movie made?
Yeah. There's still a bunch of steps. One thing that changed in that period. So we shot August at Akikos 2017, and then we premiered it 2018. And then we shot I Was a Simple Man 2019. So in those 2 years, just the industry changed, to be honest. Like pre-August at Akikos, when we went through the Sundance Labs and we were set up on all these meetings and we were pitching our film, just straight up, people would be like, there's no market for this Asian American project. And it's just, they're just like, sorry, like there's not a market for this. And our producer, Sarah, would like present all of this like research that she did about like the buying power of Asian Americans and like all of this stuff, all this research that we did. And we're like, no, we think there's a market here. Like, and like, not that our film is going to be like a blockbuster or anything, but we do think that you shouldn't ignore this segment of film goers. And of course, because there hadn't been a previous success, I think it was just tough for them to imagine that. And then after August at Akikos, at that point, Crazy Rich Asians had already come out. I think The Farewell was maybe a year or two after that. It was funny. It was almost like the same people that we were pitching to a couple years earlier were now like, what's up with your Hawaii project? Like, we're trying to diversify our slate. Like, we're looking to add some Asian American content. And it's, really cynical and kind of gross, but it really was that weird. But, the real game changer was that we were invited to the Sundance Catalyst program. And we went to Sundance Catalyst and we met with a couple of investors, both Asian American, who came into our meetings basically almost like, we're here for this Asian American project. Like, you are the project that we want to invest in because you're the only Asian American project in this portfolio. We just want to meet you and make sure you're not crazy. But we've been waiting for a project like this, Catalyst, to present a project like this to us. And they came on board, these Asian American investors, and through Catalyst, we got half our budget, basically, like a third or half or something like that, like 40%. So that got us really started. And that was a big, big, big help.
That's amazing. And then, Constance Wu is in the film. I mean, like, she's such a huge deal. Can you talk a little bit about, actually, I want to go back really briefly. Did you have representation or a sales agent for August Akikos? And then tell us about how Suits work with you at any point. Do you work with Suits? Do you ever work with Suits? How did you get to Constance Wu? Was it Suits?
No, it wasn't. It's really funny. Like, no, we approached our distributor ourselves. Like, we just cold emailed them. Our distributor on August at Akikos was Factory 25. And I would just like see Matt at festivals. And I'd be like, hey, I'm Chris. I'm the guy who made that film August at Akikos. Like, you should check it out. Like, just like saying hey and just making sure he can put a face to the film. And then after a while, he watched it. It took him a long time to watch it because we didn't have necessarily like anybody selling it or anybody like really, or any PR or anything like that. When he watched it, he was like, I love it. Like, I'll distribute this. And so we were doing all of that work ourselves. Sarah, our producer, also does a lot of work in the distribution space. She at that time founded like a small distribution collective. So she was very knowledgeable as well. And so when we were negotiating with Matt, we like retained we retained Hawaii for ourselves because we know that market and we could sell it. We could like book the theaters ourselves. We could promote it ourselves, that kind of thing. So it was very DIY, that film. We did a lot of it ourselves, finding the right partners. To get to Constance was actually, again, like a Sundance thing. I went through the Sundance Director Lab and I cast her in my scenes. And so in that lab, you cast a bunch of actors and you have a DP and you have a whole crew and you shoot scenes and like, nobody's supposed to see them. They're all really just an experiment, like a lab, like a time to really just try things. And I loved working with her. Like, we got along really well. We became friends after that. And yeah, I still remember the first scene we shot with her. It was, really just a silent scene. At that point, I think she'd been on Fresh Off the Boat for maybe like half a year. It was like in the middle of the first season. So she was becoming known, like this rising star as a comedian, but not really known for dramatic work. But then she sent me some work that I really liked that was dramatic. And I loved it. I was like, yeah, come, let's try this drama thing. And I still remember her first scene. Like, it was a wordless scene and she had like, there was like a stunned silence after we called cut because it was so powerful. Just her presence and her look. Like, our script supervisor was crying, I remember, like just from that performance, that first take. And for me, it was like suddenly that character that she inhabited started to make sense to me in a way that it didn't before she stepped into that role. And that's really what the lab is for, is that it allows you to then find things, understand your script better by shooting it. So then, after that process, like I felt like that character was just as much hers as it was mine. And so I asked her, I think the next year I was like, do you want to be a part of this film if we make it? And she's like, yes, I would love to be a part of this film. Just let me know. And then of course, Fresh Off the Boat goes on for a bunch of years. We're trying to make this film, having a hard time. Crazy Rich Asians comes out. She becomes a much bigger star than she was on Fresh Off the Boat. And we were like, we have no idea if she's still going to do our film, but we just kept her updated. We're just like, hey, like we're still pushing forward. We're hoping to shoot this maybe next year, blah, blah, blah. And she'd always be like, cool, send me the new draft. She would read the new draft and she would like tell me, yeah, I like it. And then around 2019, I just told her like, I think we're going to be able to make this film this year. Can you do it? And she was basically like, yes, like just like, I have a break. Like, this is my break. So if you can just slot me in, I will come to Hawaii and I will do it she was only there for 2 weeks. So she was there for 3 weeks. She came early to do some research and hang out and stuff. But like, I will come, I will shoot the film, and then I have to go do my other engagement. But we're like, great. So then we just like, that was our goal. Just like, we have to get it together by these weeks in the summer. And then everything else kind of just like, we just schedule everything else around her schedule. You know what I mean? And so the schedule is wild because she's in so much of the film from beginning to end. And so like, it was just production design had to go forward and then backward and then build things and then take it down. And so it was totally nuts. But because we were able to do that, because we were able to do the schedule in a way that allowed her to come, she came and did our film and had a wonderful time. I think she really loved doing it. I had a wonderful time.
That's an amazing story, but let's go back to the director's lab. So you said you met her there, but how do you cast when you're at the director's lab? Did you know her from fresh off the boat and like approach her agents, or like how does that work when you're in the lab?
So they assign you a casting director, and the casting director, I think, works with maybe she's casting all of the projects. I'm not totally sure, but her name was Edie Velasco, and she just reached out to all of the managers and the agents and sent me a bunch of videos, set up meetings for me to meet these actors. And we cast that way, when we went ahead to make I Was a Simple Man, we used Edie as our casting director.
Oh,
so
nice.
That relationship we continued throughout as well. So, I mean, so much of the film is, I'm so grateful. Like, so much of the film is, like, it doesn't exist without the Sundance Institute. I'm convinced.
I want to ask about Sundance, but I'm going to ask about it later because I want to ask about the production schedule, because you talked a little bit about the full crew and then moving into the more mobile, smaller skeleton crew. Can you talk a little bit why you chose to do that?
Yeah, a few reasons. One is because I had such a great experience working in that mobile way on August at Akikos, and I was trying to retain some of that spirit. And we also knew that there was just a lot of stuff that we had to shoot that was not necessarily B-roll, but it was maybe just one actor in a space, and we wouldn't need the crew. We would be shooting natural light. A lot of a lot of that week we shot the dog running around, like just the dog running through the city or whatever. And like, we knew like all we needed was the dog and the wrangler and us. And it's just, and like, so we just were like, okay, so a lot of the stuff that we know we don't need the full crew for, we'll just do it in that week. And I think it just allowed us then to also have fun that week. Like, it was a very leisurely week. Like, we shot a bunch of stuff. We, took long lunches, like shot the sky. We would shoot clouds. We were shooting mountains, like that kind of stuff. It was just real fun, We're hiking through the jungle, shooting a bunch of just jungle stuff. Like, it just felt like that documentary mode, even though we were shooting stuff with performers, like that documentary mode just felt like a nice sort of way to end the film. And I hope that I can figure out a way to continue to incorporate that kind of space within the production schedule, because like the traditional sort of production process is so like make your day, to the point where like sometimes I can get a little lost in the momentum of it. Like, just, okay, we got that. Now let's move on to this. We got that. Now let's move on to this. And I tend to almost like lose this sense of excitement around discovery in shooting those scenes in that way. And so even I would say by week 2, 3, I was starting to introduce improvisation into the shooting, just because I wanted to like inject a little bit of energy for myself, mostly, I think, into the film, so that I was looking like I was like, we're playing. We're still retaining a sense of play and a sense of discovery, even within this sort of big sort of machine that was running around us.
So you finished the movie, you edited it. You've been to the Sundance Labs, the writing and the directing lab. So do you just know you're going to get into Sundance, or like, how does it work? Like, when you're done, like, do you have a special person you email the movie to and they watch it, or do you submit like everybody else? Like, just talk us through the process.
We absolutely did not know we were going to get it. We didn't expect to be frank, because of our relationship with the Institute side, like Sundance Institute, Sundance Film Festival, or, they say that they're very separate. I know they hang out and talk to one another, but our relationship was mainly with the Institute side. I didn't really know anyone on the festival side. My films had not screened at the film festival previous to that. And so we relied on the feature film program to make an introduction to the programmers at the film festival. And then they watched the film that way. But we didn't have necessarily a prior relationship with the film festival side before that.
Going to the beginning of the relationship with Sundance, I think a lot of people, I mean, there's no way for you to answer this question. So I'm just putting you in a difficult position. I'm just recognizing that. And the question is like, how do you get introduced into the Sundance family? I mean, it started with the Writers Lab because that's the beginning of all the programs. And I think you're going to say something modest and wonderful, like, I just applied. I didn't know what happened. But you're an incredibly hard worker and incredibly talented. What did you make sure was in your application that they could see how great you were?
Well, for me, I think really what the main thing was that I applied. I didn't get in until I think my third application. And so I had applied multiple times. And that first time I apply, it's just a pass, I think. And you're like, okay, they're not into that. And then the second time I applied, it was again a pass, but I had gotten maybe to the second round or something. Like I felt like a little bit of maybe progression. And then, at that point, like I'm really applying for everything, like I'm just like, I'm trying to put myself out there as much as possible. I'm applying for every lab. I'm applying for every contest, applying for everything, like just putting myself out there. And then the third time I didn't have anything new. So I wasn't planning to apply, but then they reached out to me and was like, hey, Chris, like we liked your script that you applied with last year. Do you have a new draft of that? And that floored me, first of all, because it was just a straight pass. I didn't get like a note or anything. Like I had no idea that they were at all intrigued with that piece.
Yeah, they're crafty little trackers.
Yeah. And that's when I realized that really like it is about continuing to like engage them and apply multiple times because they're actually following your career. Like they're tracking you. And so when I talk to people now, I just say, just keep applying. Like they're paying attention, and they'll know the right moment in which they will be most helpful, I think, to you and your growth as an artist. And so that third time they said, please, if you have a new draft of your script, like please send it. And I actually said, I can send a new draft of that script, but I have a new script. And that new script was Simple Man. I was like, can I send you both? And they're like, yes, please just send both. And then they invited Simple Man. And that's just one of those things. Like I wasn't planning to apply with Simple Man because I'd been rejected twice. And I just thought they're not into the work, like whatever, but then they reached out and, I don't know, like it was kind of this beautiful thing where I was like, oh, wow, like they were paying attention and that they were liking something about it enough to keep me on the list of people that they were watching, which was a beautiful thing. And then of course, once I sent in Simple Man, I was like, that script was a mess. I had just written it like 2 months before. I wrote it really quickly. I wrote it within, I think, like 2-3 weeks. And so I didn't expect anything. And then later on to get invited was just like, when I got there, I was like, I don't know what I'm doing here. Like, I don't belong here. Like, what? Like, I'm standing in the room with like, yeah, I'm like hanging, like Eliza Hittman is here. I'm like, what? Like, why am I here with Eliza? Like, I don't know. It was just wild. It made no sense while I was there. But, the other thing I guess I would say is I also got better about talking about my work. I think in the materials in which you write the personal essay kind of thing or the director's statement kind of thing, I think I got much more concise. I was more clear with myself about what I was trying to do in film and what I was trying to do, where the work was coming from and where I saw myself going. Working on that side of it, working on not only the actual work, but how to talk about the work and how to contextualize your own work, I think also probably helped.
So your film hit Sundance in 2021. It's like the middle of the pandemic. You released during the pandemic. Can you just talk about like what that experience was like and, how you navigated that?
Yeah, it was totally weird. 2 weeks before our Sundance premiere, my wife and I gave birth to our first daughter. And so we had a newborn in our house during our Sundance premiere, which was totally insane. So on one hand, I was just grateful that I, didn't have to trudge up to the mountains and, I could stay home and be with the newborn and be with my wife. And like, that being said, because of that, I didn't engage as much as I wish I could have with the virtual Sundance. Like I tried to watch films, but of course it's hard. So I didn't watch as many films as I probably wished I could have. And yeah, and so it was a very weird sort of thing. It felt like a festival, but it also didn't feel like a festival because so much of it was just watching a baby. This was surprising though. At the end of it, when it ended, I realized that it didn't give me the sense of closure that usually a film premiere can, where you feel like, okay, now it's out there, it's out there in the world. And it just didn't do that for me. So yeah, that surprised me. And it wasn't really until we did like our Hawaii film premiere later on the year, which was an in-person premiere, and it was a homecoming premiere, that really it felt like, okay, now the film is done and now the film's out there in the world. Virtual premieres are weird. Like it feels very unreal.
And then what happened with the distribution of the film?
Yeah, so then going into Sundance, we have our sales, we have our PR. We ended up partnering with Strand for our distribution, Strand Releasing. And that's a relationship that goes back years because I had met Marcus, the president of Strand, and he had been someone that had been a supporter of my work previous. And so, I knew that he would be like, I know that he gets the film and that he would, craft a distribution and promotional campaign that was true to the movie and that he would be very collaborative. And then on top of that, I just love Strand's like just library. Like it's just so incredible. Like just the history of just the going back decades, like how many amazing films they've distributed. And so to be a part of that was just like it's just a real honor. And so far it's been great working with them.
My last question is about how do you sustain your lifestyle being an indie filmmaker? Tell us, what are the secrets to your success financially?
Oh man, it's so hard. I try to write as much as possible, but to write, you need time. And so often I would write, an hour in the morning or something, and then go off to my day job. And my day job, I'm very lucky to say that I was working for many, many years as an editor. And so out of school, I never thought of myself editing, but I started editing my friends' short documentaries, and then I started editing their first feature documentaries, and then I started getting more work off of that. And it was, off and on. It's not necessarily continuous work, but it was enough to allow me to then edit for a bunch and then, shoot a short film, edit for a bunch, and then take some time off to write a script, edit for a bunch. And I had a good balance working up until that point. I'm still editing. Just last month, I edited a feature for a friend of mine that I'm very, very stoked about. It's a Japanese film that we just picture locked on. So I'm still editing, but that being said, I'm hoping to do less and less of it and transition more into writing and directing full time. So we'll see how that goes. Although, I do love editing, and I do think that if the project's right or if the filmmaker's right, I will continue to edit probably. And I'll probably continue to edit my own work moving forward. Maybe not all of it, but I do enjoy editing quite a bit.
So after having like two critically and, successful features, like what does your life look like now, like getting your next feature made? Like, is it all sunshine and roses, or is it sort of like kind of back to the drawing board again, where you have to like, repeat the process you did on the first two to make your next one?
It seems like it's back to the drawing board, really. The difference is that August at Akikos and then I Was a Simple Man and the Sundance premiere has definitely opened a lot more doors. I'm not as lost, I think, as I was before. Like, I think also the experience of just making those films and then taking them out into the world also, like, I think I understand the landscape of independent filmmaking a lot more just by doing it than I did probably 5-6 years ago. That definitely helps. But yeah, right now I have a few ideas that date back to before I Was a Simple Man even, that I'm resurrecting. And I'm still in this process of trying to figure out which project is going to stand up and say, make me. And so nothing is set yet, but I do have a few things that I'm pushing forward. And I've always been interested in the television space. So I'm also pitching in the episodic series space as well. And I have an idea there that I'm super, super excited about that's moving forward. Actually, my work, like the pitches and the meetings in that space has been sort of where a lot of my attention has been these last few months. So we'll see. It's a new thing for me and I'm still learning, but exciting to learn.
What's the first film you made? How do you feel about it now?
Oh my God, it was the first film I made. I bought a DV camera when I was in college, and I basically just shot skate videos and parties and like taught myself how to edit on Premiere Pro. And that film was just weird, sort of experimental, just music editing, random footage, just playing. And the way I feel about it now is I haven't watched it. I don't even know where it is. I'm sure it's somewhere on a drive, but the way I feel about it now, actually, that's an interesting question, is I only think about the feeling of making it, which was like so freeing. And actually, I would love to just hold on to that feeling of just like pure exploration. Like it's just like I had a camera, I had some editing, I had some friends, and I just was like making weird stuff with no expectations and just trying stuff. And I would love to almost return to that sort of first film sort of mindset. I almost like to think before I make a film, I almost try to like forget everything that I've learned, or forget all of the cynical parts of what I've learned, at least, or the parts that are maybe would be obstacles to me having fun or just being free with it. And so, yeah, I mean, I the feeling of making that film is definitely one that I cherish.
What's the best filmmaking advice you've ever received?
Geez, I don't know. There's so much. One that comes to mind is someone once told me that, you know, there's going to be a lot of rejection in this work, but a lot of the no's you hear are not necessarily just no, but they're just not yet or not now. And to just keep going in spite of all those no's. And I found that to be definitely the case. I mean, that Sundance Labs thing, a case in point, they said no, but it really was just like, not right now. And when the time is right, we'll be here. And that has turned out to be something that's happened over and over in my life, where I experience a rejection or a no, but then that no can turn into a friendship, or it can turn into like a relationship with the person, or later on they can come in and be a big supporter and at the exact right time, even though they said no previously. So that one is the one that comes to mind right now.
I would love your outlook on life. It is beautiful. What is the worst, to bring in a little negativity, what's the worst advice you've ever received with regard to filmmaking?
There's so much. I went to film school. When I made my thesis film, I got a lot of bad advice about what film is and what filmmaking should be. And actually, when I submitted a rough cut, I think, of my thesis film to the faculty, I remember hearing, "This is not a film." And it just like crushed me, because I thought it was awesome.
It probably was. It probably was fantastic.
I just like was like, whoa, like that is crazy. And that's terrible, because everything's a film. Like what kind of advice, or what kind of just read on cinema is that? Like, yeah, it's such a negative sort of terrible comment. And that being said, you know, like I almost, like at that point, I almost quit. Like I almost was like, if it's going to be this hard to make the kind of work that I like, or the kind of work that I want to make, then I don't know if I have the strength to like just like keep going and like just hear this forever, you know? I did it, you know, a lot of my friends sort of were there for me at that point, like my friends at film school, and then my collaborators, they're like, no, don't listen to that, you know, like just keep doing you. And so, yeah, that, like, anyone saying that there's only one way to make a film, or anyone saying that there's only one, or something is a film and something is not a film, that's nonsense. Like you can just make a film however you want. There's no right way. There's no wrong way.
Do you have a goal as a filmmaker?
I do. And it's a great question. And it's something that I've been thinking about a lot. My goal is to have freedom, like to have artistic freedom, which means the time and the space and the resources to make the films I want to make in the way I want to make them. It seems like something that nobody has really. So it seems like a goal that seems almost impossible, just because filmmaking is so involved and so expensive. And yeah, but just to have freedom to like make cool stuff with my friends and have fun, that would be the goal. I still glimpse it every now and again when I make some of the work. Like I'm like, yeah, this is it. This is everything that I want out of filmmaking. The making of August at Akikos being like an example of that. Like, I'm like, yeah, this is what I'm looking for. And if I could just do this for the rest of my life, that would be amazing, you know?
If you could go back in time, what's the one piece of advice you'd give yourself?
I'd probably tell myself to just be patient and just trust in yourself, that even though it seems like you're making stuff and nobody's watching it and nobody's going to see it, or there just seems to be no no traction, like there will be. Just wait and just be patient and continue doing your thing and continue working hard, getting better. Even now, I think I'm still telling myself that. Like, I'm trying to imagine myself 10 years from now, telling myself, just keep doing your thing. Like, don't worry about it. This is like, play the long game. Don't be too reactive. Don't be too much trying to like let things get into your head that are so short-term sighted, and just keep your eye on sort of the long game, which is just to make great films and make films that you like and build great relationships and be a good person, you know?
Last question. Is making movies hard?
Yeah, fuck yeah, it's hard, man. It's the hardest. When we had our newborn, I turned to my wife, Sarah. I was like, is making a film harder than this newborn? And we were both like, yeah, making a film's harder than this newborn. Like, yeah, making films are hard. So yeah, but raising a newborn is also crazy hard. But yeah, making films is harder than that, I think.
Well, tell the audience how they can support you and I Was a Simple Man.
Yeah, thank you. So you can follow us on social media. We're on Twitter and Instagram at I Was a Simple Man. The film is available on VOD. You can rent it on Apple TV, Amazon, all those places. And it will be streaming. Our streaming home is going to be the Criterion channel. And so it will be streaming on Criterion, I think, in a couple of months. So you can check it out there when it's made available. And they'll put up August at Akikos as well. So both films will be on, which would be awesome.
Thank you for being on the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This is a really cool conversation. I really enjoyed it.
Alrik, what do you remember about chatting with Chris?
I remember like this feeling of like, okay, like there's nothing like really magical or special behind the Sundance Labs. It's just like they find people, you know, like through their process. If you submit over and over and over and over again, you may get in. Not saying that's all it takes. Obviously, people do that forever and never get in. But it's just like through Chris's like very humble, very like honest and open sort of description. It's like an amazing program that like allows you to do these things, but it doesn't really mean that you're going to make your movie. It doesn't mean that your movie is going to like have any success. It's just like gives you the tools to learn and grow as a filmmaker. And I feel like kind of his explanation of it and hearing about it from him kind of, I don't know, gave me more of a full picture of what it is in my mind than I had before. Before I thought it was like this elite, like fancy, like amazing thing. And maybe it is that, but I don't know. I just felt like it was also just a program that like you either can, you know, use and benefit from, or you can squander if you're not serious about your filmmaking. So I feel like, because obviously not everybody who goes through those labs comes out with movies that we've heard of, you know, and some maybe don't even make their movies. So I feel like, I don't know. It was just really interesting to hear a little bit more about that from somebody who was so open and honest about it.
I don't have any takeaways about the Sundance process because I've had that context, but there's something about Chris that I think is really magnetic in that he is so humble, but he's also so calm. Like I remember meeting him many years ago in Rotterdam at the film festival. And I just think there's this like calm confidence in him where even if I had never seen any of his work, I think I'd be down to support him just after meeting him. Like there's something about him where you're just like, oh, this guy just like seems to care about the right things in art and seems to be working very hard and seems to be very nice and a great communicator. Like, I just think the basic tenets of his personality make you want to support him, which is probably like what every filmmaker needs to traverse this industry are the personality facets that he has. So just an addition, I walked away with an artist crush on Chris yet again, confirmed. My artist crush was confirmed on him. And I think he's just really cool.
Yeah, I will second that he is very cool. But yeah, we also have a news article to talk about this week. And this is finally something I think we've mentioned on the show, or at least we definitely mentioned off the show, is these NFTs. And, you know, how everyone's saying NFTs, it's the thing that's going to change indie filmmaking. It's going to make it so you can make money on your film, blah, blah, blah. And I've always been like, I don't understand like why or how this is possible. But I mean, this article kind of opened my eyes a little bit to it. And, you know, I feel like kind of brought a little bit of clarity to my understanding of how this could work potentially. The article is called MFT Film Platform Cineverse Promises to Boost Indie Film. And it's from Ed Meza from Variety. And it's basically all about this platform Cineverse that is being created. And it's basically a film marketplace, a run through NFTs, I'm not sure if it's on a single NFT or if it's like a marketplace where you buy and sell NFTs. I'm not exactly sure which one it is. I think it's the latter, or maybe it's both. But basically, I think the idea is that like you would be able to, put your movie up there as an NFT and then control who buys it, who rents it, who owns it, and then how many people are able to do so. And then it all kind of all the profits come back to you. And then I guess it also talks about how you can resell them. But then if you resell it, then a percentage of the profit goes back to the filmmaker, which seems a little weird that if like someone buys your movie and then they resell it, that they can make more profit than the filmmaker can on the resale. That seems a little odd. But anyways, I don't know. But this was an interesting article. I think I kind of felt like it made more sense to me now, but maybe it doesn't. I don't know. What do you think, Liz? What do you think about this whole thing?
I have no comment on the specific platform of Cineverse. I mean, it sounds interesting, but I just wanted to talk more generally about blockchain distribution and decentralizing distribution and banking and how I'm in favor of all of those things, but I don't. It's the issue that every new platform and every new technology has is that they have to create a tipping point where the general public understands and comes and participates, right? So it's like without the audience, we don't really have a platform that's meaningful to filmmakers. If it's just a small subset of indie filmmakers who want to be mavericks in the way that they distribute their content, and then that's it's the word parochial. It's like it's a very small subset of an audience that we want to have access to. But when I released Speed of Life, I did a deal with a blockchain distributor, and they gave me an MG, and they tested out my work on the blockchain. And I really love the idea of the digital ledger that comes in this world of like, once someone makes a purchase, I immediately get my X%, the platform gets its X%, and there's like immediate disbursement of funds, and that there's like digital ledgers, the digital contracts, like all of that stuff is so exciting to me. And that's why I love to see these platforms pop up. But ultimately, I don't know if we're going to convince the general public to participate. And that's what I think is worth kind of chewing on is like how do we okay, so we ran this Kickstarter at Sundance a few years ago when I was there. And it was for funding efforts in self-distribution. But the problem is that you have to explain how difficult and insane traditional distribution is in order to convince someone to give you money for a Kickstarter campaign about self-distribution. It's like the hill is too high to climb in the very short period of time in order to put together a crowdfunding campaign. And I worry about this too, is like, how do you explain to a general public when I have trouble explaining what an NFT is and I work in distribution, and to participate and put their money on a platform when they don't see like an Apple logo or an Amazon logo or all these like what they think are trusted brands. It's something new and scary. So I'm wary is what I'm saying.
Well, like, I guess what I'm thinking about is like, when you would just sell your movie on your website directly to people, like this seems like maybe you could just do it through this NFT Cineverse platform. And then that way it's just a better record of all the money that comes in, and a better way of doing it. But yeah, I guess that is a question. It's like, what is the barrier to entry? Like, do you have to sign up to Cineverse in order to purchase it? Like, how can you view it? Do you literally just download it onto your computer and watch it that way? Or do you have to watch it through Cineverse? Like, I think that was the big barrier for me in this whole NFT thing, was like the idea that you had to watch it in the metaverse in order to view the item. But I don't think that's the case. I think you just download it once you buy it and then you have it on your computer, which that makes more sense to me. But then if that's the case, like, how does that help with piracy? Because like people could, if they can download it to their computer, then they can upload it to wherever they want. Like, there's no control there.
Well, it's got to be traceable, because if it's part of this digital ledger, there has to be something unique in the transaction that could tie it back to the ledger, right?
Right.
But I'm also not necessarily anti-piracy. which again, I know sounds so weird, but I'm not anti-piracy because for emerging filmmakers, a lot of us prioritize eyeballs over revenue because we just really want to get our name out there as emerging filmmakers. That doesn't mean I don't believe people deserve to be paid. And I don't want, I'm not desperate for revenue. But you bring up some good concerns. Like, what are the practices of protecting the IP? What are the intricacies of how people do it? All of it's super interesting. But someone needs to hold our hand through this process, I think, in order to get larger numbers to congregate to use these platforms. And it needs to be done outside of this, this acronym, this talking over each other system of communication, this lexicon, because that's the problem with distribution in itself, is that it's weird and alienating and shuts people out in just the way it operates. And I'm worried that this decentralized world is going to do the same thing, where people are just talking about acronyms all the time and not really communicating what's happening here, which is taking a power away from middlemen, which is fantastic. That should be the headline.
But what's stopping Sony or someone else, whatever, Netflix, from buying your NFT film and then reselling it however they want, and then only giving you a percentage of the resales?
Oh my God, I don't even know how to even compute all of that.
That's what I'm like, okay, so, but because is it because it's only one and then you resell it, then it's just that one that's been resold? And then if you're selling it yourself, you can sell as many copies as you want, is my understanding of an NFT, but you control that amount. So there's only can be so many of the movie. So you can say, there's only 2,000 digital copies of the alternate, buy them while they last, and then when you're done watching it, then you can sell it to somebody else. But I feel like that whole thing of downloading it into your own computer to watch it, then that can't be possible then, because otherwise you could just copy it easily. If you can download it, you can copy it. Yeah. So I think however you're watching it is probably within the Cineverse platform, and then getting someone to watch movies on your terms and not on their own terms, through their own systems or their laptop, their phone, their home entertainment system, that is a huge barrier, even just going to these virtual film festivals, it's if you can't get it up on your own screen and where you watch it, you're not really going to watch it, unless you're a special, unless you're an individual who watches movies on their computer normally, and that's how you watch them. And so then it's no different. But yeah, I just think there's just so many different issues and concerns around this that it's I feel like maybe someday it'll be some place or something, but right now it just seems like it's so early.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily know if it's how is this going to really help indie filmmakers? That's what I want the answer to. That's why we need to have someone like Jason Charnick on the show to talk about why are they so NFT crazy?
Filmmaker Jason Charnick, who loves NFTs and listens to the podcast.
Yeah. Tell us, Jason. I want to know, damn it.
But I do believe, because I want to be clear, that these things are good for indie film. I do want us to steer in this direction away from these platforms. I mean, you think about the Amazon Film Festival Stars program. Just a refresher, a few years ago, they said if you get into X festival, you get an X license fee. It was this automatic thing where it wasn't curated. It was a little bit more democratic. And it was very interesting. They shook the industry up, and then they withdrew and they retracted that program. And then they started taking content off of their platform. So I'm just saying, the reason this is so good for indie film is because we don't have to be reliant on the whims of these massive corporate overlords who get to do whatever they want with our films. That is what's really upsetting. And so I just want us to do a better job of educating each other on what exactly this opportunity is. But yeah, maybe we should have Jason on. Jason, are you interested?
Yeah. 15-minute segment. We'll talk about NFTs. Let's do
15, no more, please. Yeah.
No, not 16, 15.
We also have a new iTunes review to read, so let's share it with everyone. Mom of the Boys, yet another username that I enjoy. Mom of the Boys said, such a fun and informative podcast, 5 stars. And the bulk of the review said, I just found this podcast and now I'm going to binge the whole thing. Well, Mom of the Boys, don't forget to be a patron because you're going to miss 100 episodes that are not accessible to you unless you're one of our patrons. But thank you for listening to the show and for saying such kind things.
Yeah, thanks, Mom, of the boys. And it'll soon be like 300 episodes that you won't be able to listen to. So all y'all out there who are listening to the back catalog, those days are numbered unless you're a Patreon patron. So I don't know, enjoy the show while you can, I should say, or just become a patron and you can enjoy it forever. Also, you can always send us a question, comment, or suggestion to podcast@makingmoviesishard.com. Or if you really like the show, you can leave us a review on iTunes like Mom of the Boys did. And finally, check us out on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter at MMIH Podcast, and YouTube at Making Movies is Hard Podcast, where the show still lives, even though it's just in audio video form, not in true video form. Also check out the International Screenwriters Association, the ISA. It's an organization designed to connect writers with filmmakers through a number of programs they offer, including publishing your logline to a network of industry professionals, consultation courses, contests, and their top 25 writers lists featuring some of their best writers. So head over to www.networkisa.org to sign up for free today. Thanks to Chris Yogi for coming on the show, and to our amazing producer Eric Toms for being amazing, and thanks to our editor Jeff Vrymut for doing the editing as always. Thanks to you all for listening, and we'll talk to you all next week. So, yeah, I think we're done, right, Liz? Nothing else to say?
We're done. Yes, we're done.
All right, Jeff, you can cut that out.